I went from skinny to pudgy to aesthetic. Today I'm going to be telling you exactly why I went through each of these phases and the mistakes I made at each point. When it comes to building an aesthetic body, a lot of guys are making a lot of key fundamental errors. And I was there myself too. I wasn't training the correct muscle groups and I was following bad advice. In this video, I'm going to tell you exactly how to train and which muscle groups you need to focus on in order to build an aesthetic body. So first things first are your side delts. So this is the first thing that most people who know anything about aesthetics will mention to you when they're talking about building an aesthetic body. Lateral raises trains your side delts, so it gives you that width at the top of your body, which is so hard to get, but so very important if you want to look aesthetic, because it kind of just gives you that mass, like that width at the top, that just improves your physique and your overall look by so much. This is also a big point of contention for me. I never really cared too much about shoulders at all when I was a beginner. I thought they didn't matter, and I thought the importance of it was vastly overstated, especially for such a small muscle group. I didn't want to really waste my time and effort on this. So I stayed stuck lateral raising 2.5 pound plates for years. The thing is, lateral raises are so key if you want to build an aesthetic body. They make a huge difference to your overall frame and look. The biggest mistake a lot of people make is they just don't take it seriously like me, or they'll throw it in at the end of a workout once or twice a week. If you're really serious about aesthetics, you should be lateral raising basically every upper body day. I'm talking about 3 or even 4 times a week. You can do it at home, find some time to hit some lateral raises. It's not that difficult to find something heavy enough to lateral raise with, even if you're not in the gym, even if you don't have proper dumbbells at home. It's a very small muscle group, and so you need to hit it very frequently if you want to maximize the gains and see the full growth potential come to fruition. The second thing I would say is really focus on just getting the overload in. Because you're using such a small muscle group with relatively light weights, it can be hard to progress with regular dumbbells, incrementing by 5 pounds, but it's on you to make it happen. Don't stay stuck like me. Take the heavier weights and start using momentum. Swing the weight up and control it on the way down. Use partial reps. Pause at the top. Use different strategies to create a stimulus. Don't stay stuck using the same weight. It's better to make bad progress than stay stuck and make no progress at all. I wish I had someone tell me this sooner, but as soon as I started forcing the overload, as soon as I started swinging the weight up and controlling it down, using partial reps, using stop and holds, I began to see much more growth in my side delts and much more strength so that I can continue to progress and overload it from that point on. All right, next up we got the pull-ups and the pull-downs. So for me, again, this was not something that I was doing well at the start. The pull-down felt really awkward. I couldn't feel it in my lats. I couldn't feel it in my back really. The motion felt awkward. And for pull-ups, I always felt like this weird clicking in my left shoulder. On top of that, I wasn't really that strong, so I could maybe get like 1 or 2, but it wasn't really, a full set of work. I much preferred the horizontal rowing. It just felt more natural. Maybe it's because of my body type, maybe it's because of my athletic background using momentum. I'm not sure, but I focus much more on horizontal rowing, horizontal back movements instead of the vertical. The reason why you want to focus on the vertical, even though it's more uncomfortable for a beginner, even though it's a little bit more difficult, it's going to be much better for aesthetics because it gives you that width. So basically what happens when you pull down is you pull down and you force your lats to come out wide. That's going to give you that width, so that you have the shoulders and you taper down. It gives you that little taper. It creates a really aesthetic physique and a really aesthetic frame. That's really, really desired. Doing horizontal movements, they more so develop the thickness in your back rather than the width. And that's really good for strength and just for general back hygiene as well. You get less injured. So definitely still do those once in a while. But if you want to focus on aesthetics, prioritize the vertical pulls. Prioritize the pull-ups, and especially prioritize the lat pull downs. I know it's more awkward. I know it's not as fun as, the T-bar or the cable rows, but it's going to get you the physique you want. All right, next up, we got overhead pressing. So this is one that I feel like not only me, but everyone kind of just misses out on. Especially newer lifters, they don't really overhead press. And it's rare to see people overhead pressing. I feel like I'm the only one who really overhead presses. Maybe on a blue moon, I'll see someone else doing it here and there. But if we're talking about the full-on barbell military overhead press, nobody does it. This is a key critical error. See, the military overhead press is the best shoulder exercise, the best shoulder workout. You're gonna be moving the most amount of weight you can with your shoulders. You're gonna be creating the greatest growth stimulus in your shoulders. It's the one that you're gonna be able to progress on the best and the hardest. It's going to be responsible for driving your shoulders to the next level. Now, I understand that, the overhead press is uncomfortable. It's not as fun as the bench press, and it's really hard to progress in. When you compare it to exercises like squat, bench, the overhead press, it gets hard really, really fast. And so that's why people don't really like it. The thing is, it's so much more important for not only aesthetics, which we're talking about right now, when it comes to shoulder growth, shoulder development, way more important for aesthetics, but also even for just general practicality. Because you're on your feet, the overhead press transfers much better into real life, into athletics. And it's really good for your shoulder health. Unlike the bench press, which is actually quite bad for your shoulders, the overhead press is very, very good for your shoulders. If you can get good at the overhead press, you're gonna have good, healthy, strong shoulders that you can then use to further all the rest of your upper body lifts. Anyways, let's get to the practical stuff. The overhead press builds basically everything across the top of your body. Build your shoulders, obviously, and it's going to be responsible for the most growth there. But you're also going to see massive growth in your traps and in your neck and even your upper chest. So overhead press is really, really key when it comes to training for aesthetics. And basically every guy misses the mark here, especially beginner lifters. But most guys just aren't doing this, or they're not doing it seriously. They're not doing it enough. They're not overloading it, and they're missing out on the gains and the aesthetics that come with that. You need to prioritize this exercise if you want to have an aesthetic body. All right, very quickly, let's just run over a couple of tier 2 exercises before I go on to some common mistakes. So some tier 2 exercises, we got first barbell rows. So barbell rows are responsible for a little bit of width at the top. You are working at your shoulders, your upper back, and even a little bit of traps, your forearms and biceps, of course. Overall, it's a really good movement, great for creating a strong back. I would highly recommend picking up barbell rows. It's something that I neglected for a very long time, and I really wish I didn't. The second tier 2 exercise we have is incline bench press. Specifically, if you can do this with dumbbells, incline bench press is going to build the upper chest, which is the best part of your chest to build if you're trying to get an aesthetic body. Ideally, you use dumbbells because dumbbells give you a greater range of motion and greater stretch. So you're going to see better growth with dumbbells. I personally don't use dumbbells. I use the barbell just because the dumbbells do tweak a persistent injury in my back. So I prefer to stick with the barbell for this one. All right, we got the squat. So the squat is the king of lower body exercises. You're basically going to work everything in your lower body, but specifically and importantly, you're going to be working out your glutes and your quads. Now, these are really, really key. Obviously, you're not a girl, but still having a big ass is always beneficial. It's always going to make your physique look big, look better. You don't want to be walking around with a skinny butt. It's not going to look good. On top of that, when it comes to an aesthetic physique, we talk a lot about the V taper coming down across from the top of the body, but at the bottom, you kind of want it to look like an X too. You want it to look somewhat decent at least. Otherwise, it's going to end up looking a bit awkward. You have a V taper upper body and then you just have chicken legs. So don't neglect your squats. Go out there and train your legs too. And lastly, we have an honorable mention for the deadlift. So the thing about deadlifting is that it's really great for your back. But on top of that, I'll tell you 2 key things that the deadlift does. So after deadlifting, the next day, you're going to, 1, have a better posture. So you're going to sit up straighter. You're going to stand up straighter. And that in itself is already a huge win, right? It's going to make you look better. It's going to make you look more confident and more aesthetic. And secondly, the deadlift, one of the best ways to work out your traps actually, especially if you're somebody who's deadlifts a bit heavier, you get a great trap pump after deadlift. And like we said before, building everything above this shoulder line is very, very key for when it comes to aesthetics. So if you can do that, you're going to look amazing. So now I'm going to tell you a couple of critical errors that I made when I made that transition to pudgy, a couple of key fundamental brain farts that I had when I was training, and why I wasn't aesthetic for a long period of time. First of all, I really didn't believe in shoulders. I thought that shoulders were not important. And what I really believed in was biceps. I thought biceps was like the most important or most aesthetic muscle. I was like, dude, this is like your arms. Like this is the one that everyone sees. It pops out your shirt and it just makes you look cool. The thing about biceps is, yes, while it's true, it looks kind of good when you have big biceps in a t-shirt, and it is kind of fun to have. It's not actually that important when it comes to building, that aesthetic frame, that sexy kind of frame that people are talking about, that people desire. The one that women desire, the one that men kind of look at and are like, I want to be like that. When it comes to the overall frame, your biceps don't really play a factor in that, whereas your shoulders are very, very important. And that was a key mistake I made. The other key mistake I made was not committing to the bulk. So instead, I did what most uninformed people do when they first start going to the gym, which is like you start lifting and then it's like, okay, you eat a little bit more protein, eat a little bit less carbs, and kind of just take it from there, trying to stay maybe healthy, eat less sugar, eat more like vegetables or whatever. And I ended up kind of just bloating myself and not looking that great at all. When it comes to committing to the bulk and growing your muscle mass while staying lean, it's not about lean bulking. It's about pushing yourself very hard in the gym, letting your effort and intensity in the gym drive your growth and dictate the way your body's going to be shaped, and then fueling that on the back end with your diet, which just means when it comes to the bulk, eating a lot of food and making sure you're hitting your protein. That's all that matters. You don't want to be overcomplicating the process, and you don't want to be doing stuff that's not in line with the goal. So commit to the bulk, stay focused on exactly what the mission is. Don't be trying to, lean bulk or recomp. Save that, for once you finish the process. Like once you're maybe like me now, okay, you just maintain or you do slight recomp adjustments. Don't be trying to lean bulk or do anything like crazy restrictive diets. This is not the time for it right now. If you're trying to build, trying to grow muscle, doing things like that is not going to get you anywhere. You want to stay focused on the mission. All right, guys, that's basically it for this guide. It's a bit of a long guide, but I hope you found it useful. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. Be sure to check out my free muscle building checklist in the description below. A lot of people make a lot of mistakes, and a lot of people also leave a lot of gains on the table just by forgetting to do one or two few key things. So make sure you grab that checklist if you haven't already, so you don't have any leaks when it comes to building your muscle. Like the video if you did. Subscribe for more content just like this. I help guys go from skinny to jacked. So if that's of interest to you, be sure to hit the subscribe button to stick around for more. But with that being said, guys, I hope you liked the video. I'll see you in the next one.